Six pack Lapadat. We got the team together. You guys were live at the event. Amelia, you called it with me. So you seen, I mean, we did every single primetime session, and any morning, afternoon sessions, obviously, we were caught up on. And so we got it all, including the behind the scenes and talking about the behind the scenes. We
Mhm.
got Matt Gary returns. My man, you were in several of these battles. You were obviously there also every single day of the event. And it's always nice whenever you can to get people who are at the event
Mhm.
on the recap show. Because we know the background stories, we know the vibes, we know what the hell was happening, the backstories on all the different battles. So let's kick it off. We'll start on the women's side and we'll go from the lightest weight class up to the heaviest, like we normally do, and recap the events. And starting with the 47 kilo women's, I think the story here, obviously Jessica Espinal had to pull out. Jessica Espinal being the reigning number one 47 in the world with the world record. Turbo Tiff being the world champion, and a lot of us were looking at 2025 being a clash between those two. And it was a conversation piece. I remember being on this show, swinging around the table, asking who wins this big clash,
Mhm.
whether it's going to be Jessica Espinal or Turbo Tiff. Obviously, Turbo Tiff has an amazing track record with these battles, four-time world champion in the Open. And some people were saying, including yourself, I think, Matt, Espinal
Yep.
might be the one to retake because she's the
Mhm.
number 147 in the world with that world record she hit at Junior Worlds. However,
Right.
as things progress and turn out, not to be. And it's the return of a legend in Heather Connor. Now, Heather in the 47s didn't have to put her foot on the gas. Jessica pulled out, and with all due respect to the other 47s, this was Heather's. She could have just operated in cruise control. But to our excitement, she didn't totally take her foot up. She probably had some room,
Mhm.
but 425 kilo total, a 15 kilo total jump on her previous, which was 410. 15 kilos added to her total in the 47 kilo class is massive. That's not a small jump. 15 kilos in that weight class is huge. Now I'm going to throw this conversation out there. What does this mean in terms of a battle with Turbo Tiff? Matt, what do you think, sir?
Yeah, I mean, she's gonna have to be able to travel abroad and be able to reproduce this type of performance if she wants to come out ahead of Tiffany. I think Tiffany has had the higher ceiling amongst the other 47s. We've seen that. We've seen Tiff be able to win with fewer than 9 attempts, as is, you know, her typical fashion. Tiffany often doesn't make all 9 lifts, but even when she does, she's scrappy and she seems to be able to survive the clash, so to speak. So what we saw from Heather, as you said, Ryan, was just this exquisite 9 for 9 performance where she didn't have to push incredibly hard, but she clearly, exerted herself somewhat to the tune of a 15 kilo PB total. We saw a lot bigger lifts from Heather in training to the tune of, I think, a 152 and a half and a 155 squat. We you know we I think we get lulled to sleep just because we're used to seeing the big pulls from Heather. So it's really nice to see, her be able to come full circle and make the big pull on the platform and hit 205. So I just think going in, for trying to forecast the future, she's going to have a performance like this, and hopefully she can add some to it because Tiff is already a few kilos ahead of her, presumably. But we also know that Heather doesn't typically cut weight, Tiff does, so we've got those factors as well. I know in the past Heather's had some issues with traveling. Just that has seemed to be a thorn in her side. So the hope is that she can arrive healthy in top form without any travel hiccups, and we can see two lifters going head to head at their absolute best and sort it out on the platform. Clearly, with Heather having the last pull, but she always does. And so, yeah, I think that's what we want to see. That's what we wanted to see with Jess. Unfortunately, that's not happening. So we've got Heather now.
Amelia, what do you think about this? Heather coming in 425. If she has 5 more kilos sprinkled throughout the 3 lifts, she's in 430 territory. and 430 is probably striking distance.
Yeah, well, I mean, 425 is kind of striking distance as well. She's 8 kilos behind Tiff, 8.5 kilos behind that world record. Um, she said to us, Ryan, when we went back after squats, to see how she was getting on, that she's going to lower her bench opener, which she did. So we know that, after squats, she did pull back a little bit in terms of kilos. And Jess is incredible, and obviously we wanted to see that head to head between her and Heather and her and Tiff. But I think it a little unfair to Heather as well, maybe to say that, oh, we wanted to see Jess, but now we've got Heather, when I think we don't know in the face-off between Jess and Heather who may have come out on top anyway. Even, it's a game day sport, not just, who's strongest period or who, and we don't know who on that day would have come out on top. But the performance that Heather put up was incredible. And like we said, it's 8 kilos behind where Tiff is. She'll get the advantage to pull last. She has competed most recently internationally, I think, in Malta Worlds. So she's had issues in the past, but she's also seemed to have made some incredible strides in competing and training recently. And I think, we're still up for a really good fight between Turbo and between Heather, and there is a little bit of ground still to make up. Um, especially if Tiff's on a 9 for 9 day, which, I don't think we've seen for the last couple of meets. But I still think it could be a incredibly close battle between the two of them.
I'm super happy that Heather decided in a time when she didn't need to be pushed to grab this title in the team spot. She decided to drop a 425. In terms of selling points for IPF Worlds, we needed this. If she just was in cruise control and went around 410, she would know that she had 425 in her, but we wouldn't. We being the powerlifting community, and it wouldn't be nearly as much hype. Now that you hit 425, moving into a clash with Turbo Tiff, you got to take that seriously. Because I tell you what, she might have had 5 kilos in that dead alone. And
Yeah.
that brings her up to 430, let alone to Matt's point about her squat, lowered the bench because why risk anything? You might as well cruise in. So the kilos are there. It's going to be an interesting clash. And it's always fun when you have kind of a foreshadowing, a generational clash where she was the GOAT previously, and now you have Turbo Tiff, who racked up 4 world titles and obviously can lay her claim as being the GOAT for that weight class now. Ooh, always love those generational battles of the previous to the now reigning. We'll see, but we needed Heather to post up a big total, and she did. Grateful she did that. All right, and before we move into 52s, Alexis Swayze and Cindy Van closing out the podium for the 47s and moving into the 52s now. And Amelia, we got ourselves a new 52 kilo national champion. Um, Serene posting up a 427 and a half. What are your thoughts on the 52s?
Well, so yeah, it was really, really interesting. And obviously to cover kind of, if people didn't watch Nationals and expected obviously Megan to be winning that fight, she weighed in pretty heavy, I think in the 54s actually on the day. She's got obviously other things to focus on moving forward. So we ended up seeing actually a bit of a tighter battle between Serene and Vanessa for the title than we would have expected. So Serene Gaynor Metzinger, now the 52 kilo champion with that 427 total. And I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm just pulling up the nominations for Germany now. I'm not sure where she lands in that, but in terms of the battle on the day, I think we were expecting a bit of a runaway with Megan Herbert, and it's always exciting to see a little bit more of a fight on the day. But it definitely was a turnaround, and it's really cool to see new names representing, the States and different countries in general.
What was your impression of the 52s?
Yeah, admittedly, I didn't really have my finger on the pulse of this session. I mean, clearly, as Amelia said, I mean, I think the thought was is that Megan Hurlburt would be the favorite. I know that she's had some life circumstances that kind of precluded her from making weight and so forth, and that was kind of well documented. But that's certainly her story to tell. And so all along, I think Megan knew that she wasn't going to be competing; that she was just going to come in and weigh in heavy. And then, yeah, I think looking at the nominations, based on worlds, I mean, Sariana, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I mean, she went 7 for 9, and hit a 427 and a half total. And if one of the misses was a squat, the second squat, so that she had to retake it. And then she missed her third bench. So you kind of look at those two misses and you think, well, if she hadn't missed the second squat, maybe that was on depth. I'm not sure. I don't quite recall. If you add some of those kilos back in, perhaps that's a 10 kilo bump on her total, or at least a 7.5. And she might be in the mix there. It looks right now that she's slated to be in that B group. But to your point, Amelia and Ryan, it is exciting when you have new faces on these national teams. These are once in a lifetime opportunities for a lot of people. And so the roster, can take on a different shape and a different form. And it's just a tremendous opportunity for her. And, just encourage her to absolutely go and put her best foot forward and make the most of it and kind of see where she lands. And even if she is in that B group, there's absolutely zero shame. I think we've seen lifters in the B group kind of shock people, total really well, and then wind up, out totaling some of the people in the A group sessions there too. And there's always a possibility when you're on that fringe, when you're right on the line there, because they take the top 8 lifters, that if there are some no-shows, that you could then get ascended or brought back up into the A group. So just a good opportunity for her.
That 52 kilo class internationally is absolutely full of killers. And
Yeah.
obviously leading that charge, Evie Corrigan, but even Megan Lee Smith from New Zealand as well. Like it's just Floon Deckers, the Euro champ. Like it's absolutely nothing but killers. And
Yep.
obviously Megan Hurlburt, um, with whatever she had to deal with, and this was outside powerlifting stuff, like you said, her story to tell, but still showing up on the day, even though she
Mhm.
knew, look, I'm not going to make this weight class, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to lift. I told her when I seen her in the warm up room, like, hats off to you, because I know it's not always easy. You showed up, you lift, you do your thing, and so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Germany, for sure. She'll be in the B group operating from there and have to. It's tough, but we've seen people from the B group actually do big things, and even in the overall top 5, and even end up on the podium sometimes. You just got to post up that big total. Moving into the 57. So the 57 kilo class. Interesting enough. Coming in, we didn't know what to expect from Natalie. Natalie probably wasn't fully sure what to expect from herself. It could have been some adversity faced, depending how this all unfolded, depending on where Natalie's total was going to end up. Because Mariah Bolden was coming in strong, had a big total, had an absolutely phenomenal day herself, went 9 for 9. And Natalie, when she needed to, got it done and might have even surprised some people. I was a stitch surprised. Natalie ending up with 482.5, obviously below her best. But 482.5 is a healthy total for somebody that was injured. And I wasn't sure how injured she might have been. If this showing gave hope that within 9 weeks, she might be 100%. And she's going to need to be. If she's going to face off with Sarah Nali from Italy and Jad Jacob from France, she has to be 100%. If she was low in the mid 400s, it'd be a toe-to-toe battle with Mariah, first off. But second off, how do you fill that gap by the time June rolls around? 482.5. Amelia, to your estimation, do you anticipate she'll be ready for Worlds to press and be 100%?
I think 100% is still a bit of a question mark right now, but what I believe is that that would have been a huge confidence boost for Natalie. Having had that competition after every lift, especially every third attempt, we saw a huge beaming smile off of her because I think she's rediscovering where that ceiling is. And after injury, it is that fine line where you're walking of, am I in pain? Is this going to hurt me? Is it just discomfort? Am I just getting used to it? And I think doing nationals and, like you said, under her best total, but still huge total, would have shown her where she is at with that and given her the confidence perhaps to push feeling a little more healthy in the next 10 weeks, and 10 weeks is a tremendous amount of time, especially for somebody as strong as Natalie. So, whether she'll be up at her all-time best 100%, I definitely think if we're looking at the nominations for Worlds, currently nominated in sixth with that 482.5, I think Natalie has more than a good chance of vying for that podium. I think a lot of the nominated numbers are going to jump around anyway, whether that's up or down from different people. But 100% is hard to say. I think definitely stronger and healthier than we saw her at Nationals, which already was leaps and bounds like better and higher than we've seen her in the last year. So I think it's going to still be exciting. I think she's going to be able to put up something much bigger than we saw at Nationals, where she was able to not coast entirely, but coast a little bit more. I think was here at 90% at Worlds, and I think that's a threat anyway.
Is it a big enough 90% with these killers? That's a tough ask. Um, Matt, let me get your impression of that as well. And then I believe, were you not handling Mariah
I
or
was,
assisting?
yeah. So,
Okay. And
yep,
she
I
had a great
was.
battle with Michelle Lynn, who missed like all three of those ladies. Damn near 9 for 9. Michelle obviously missed one bench, had to retake it. That's 5 kilos, and only two
Yep.
and a half kilos separated her from Mariah. Great battle on the podium by them. So yeah, tell me your thoughts about Natalie as well as the battle that happened on PA Nets.
Yeah, it was exciting. I was able to collaborate with my friend and colleague Jason Tremblay, who writes Mariah's training. And so this was Mariah's second meet with Powerlifting America, and she came into the tune of going 9 for 9 and hitting three PBs. She got a squat, a bench, and a total PB, and just lifted like an absolute pro. She's a machine and just a joy to coach. And yeah, it was a tight battle there with Michelle, kind of to sort out the remainder of the podium. We kind of knew going in that Natalie was the heavy favorite, albeit dealing with an injury and going to be less than her best. But yeah, so we're very thankful that we were able to secure second place there. And then insofar as kind of piggybacking on what Amelia said with Natalie, really nice to see her just lift well, represent herself well, come in clearly under her best. We know that she can total. I think she's totaled 516 and a half. So absolute world-class athlete, has been an IPF world champion. And she's going to need, a similar type total at Worlds. And so I think the hope is that it's nice that she can walk away unscathed, that now she can regroup. To Amelia's point, has 10 weeks to put together a package and a plan to come into the Worlds and then tangle with these other killers. And let's not forget the two from GB that we have, and Bobby Butters and Joy Namani. So clearly, Natalie at her best, a threat to win, certainly a podium threat if she's not at her best, and just really going to be exciting. But I think we all, look, I think as competitors and as coaches, we all want to see athletes at their very best. And so, yeah, I really hope that she can heal. I love Natalie. I hope that she can take care of that hip flexor and still mend the back appropriately, and that she can come in and do her thing at Worlds. And that's going to be a really, really exciting battle, because we have the emergence, as you said, Ryan, of Sarah Naldi, and of course, Jade Jacob. Hopefully she's kind of on the mend as well. And that's going to prove to be a really exciting battle.
Moving into the 63s, and oh my goodness. What do you say about Megan Scanlon at this point? She posted up 566, and the world record, of course, held by Coral Lagara, 557 and a half.
Yeah.
Literally the greatest 63-kilo performance in terms of weight lifted we'd ever seen. And this was a tip of the hat and some respect given to Angelina Martinez. I talked to Brian Scanlon, Megan's husband, before the competition, and he said, look, we posted up something decent at Sheffield. By decent, I mean it was a big number, but we posted it up. But we're not going to sit on the couch and watch as some young gun tries to take a swing at that. We're going to show up. If you're going to beat us, you got to beat us head to head. You're strong. How strong are you when the world champion's in the room and you're feeling that pressure? And Megan Scanlon, again, like Heather Connor, not going in cruise control, dropping the hammer and giving us a performance. It's incredible how strong she's getting at this stage in her career and the gains she's making at this stage in her career. To your estimation, Matt, and you've been around the block, Is she the greatest 63 of all time?
I mean, I think if she's not, she's certainly in the conversation. I mean, look at what she's doing now. I mean, she's putting up totals that are trumping Carola Gara and Leah Bavois. And I think those are the two that we had previously considered as the greatest 63s of all time because they were doing it on a consistent basis. And so Meg has had a hiccup there and there, here and there, and obviously she had the twins. But my goodness, I mean, it just seems like every time we turn around now, she's knocking it completely out of the park, and she's getting stronger. And so I don't even know. I mean, 566 is phenomenal, but clearly, I mean, she missed one bench, but I think there's more meat on the bone. I think, if we see a good prep from her, we could see over 570. So yeah, right now I think we're in a position where we could say that Meg is certainly the best 63 of all time. And if she's not, then she's certainly put forth the best performance. I mean, data, don't lie, and that is the data. So it's exciting to see. And I just want to say, I walked up to her and I walked up to her husband, Brian, and I said, huge respect to the both of you. I said the same thing to Amanda Lawrence. Huge respect for you women being here, because according to the team selection criteria, which I'm very much adamantly against, and I've been very vocal about that, I think that this should be a meritocracy. You need to come on game day, you need to put it on the line, and you need to compete head to head. I don't begrudge anybody who didn't, because that is the rule, and you're playing according to the rules. So the lifters who have used their Sheffield totals and all that sort of thing to not come to nationals, that's fine, because you are abiding by the rules. But credit to Meg Scanlon, credit to Amanda Lawrence for coming and actually competing and going head to head at the same venue, weighing in on the same scales, dealing with the same platform crew, the same referees, head to head competition. And it's clearly brought out the best in those two lifters. Meg to the tune of a huge PB and unofficial world record total, and Amanda damn near beat her best total. And we're going to get to her, shortly. So huge respect to both of them.
Agreed. I would echo those sentiments, like I was saying on the live stream. Amelia, what are your thoughts on Angelina? Young upstart who's adding kilos to her total. I think she finished off with what was it?
510, I believe.
Yeah, 510, but that's about a 15 kilo bump, and she might have had more in her if she lowered the deadlift a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
I think she absolutely had more in her, with the PRs from her that we had on paper going into the day. She, I think, surpassed all of them. I think squat, bench, deadlift, and total. She's incredibly strong. Obviously, when you're going head to head with Meg Scanlon, it's a tough ask. But she ended up in a bit of an island on her own. We had Abigail, Sydney, and Hannah who had an incredible fight for bronze, all ending up on 480, separated just by body weight. But she was very, very strongly in silver, and so much so that Meg saw her and showed respect to her competitors, which like Matt said, I have huge respect for, came and decided I'm not going to leave it up to chance. And to be able to put the pressure on, someone like Meg Scanlon a bit like that shows, how talented an athlete Angelina is, and, the future that she has in front of her if she kind of remains on this trajectory. And, echoing just what you guys said about Meg, just what a class act, in terms of how she carries herself and the performance she gave, and really had no need to give such a masterclass, but treated us to it anyway. And like you said, Ryan, with the earlier classes, it allows us to get a little preview to how exciting Worlds is going to be.
We also had quite the battle for the bronze medal position. Abigail Brosh clinching her podium spot, but Sydney Hunter threatening, probably got a little overzealous on the last deadlift, missed her last deadlift. All of these women being tied on 480 total. Matt, what are your thoughts on the podium finishes here? As you see, I just lost my page here. One sec, Abigail and then Hannah Peterson, sorry, all finishing 480, with Abigail being the lighter lifter. I mean, it was a battle to get onto that podium.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when you just look at the results, right? It just again, it's cliche, and we constantly say it. It's just you can't miss. You just, and so Abigail, was the only one of those three podium contenders there after Angelina, who went 9 for 9, and but being one of the weaker deadlifters to the tune of Sydney being able to pull after her, she's leaving her fate, so to speak, in the hands of somebody else. And then you said clearly, Ryan, that Sydney just kind of overreached a little bit. But at that point, from Sydney's perspective, there is no other number to put on the bar, right? You have to go and and try to take a shot there, to go for the W. But yeah, just a little bit overly ambitious, with the 230 pull. I didn't see the 222, so I'm not certain how much she had kind of left in the tank. Perhaps she could have taken 225 or 227, and maybe that would have gone or something like that. But it just makes for an exciting fight for the podium, and that's oftentimes what we see in some of these classes where we clearly have two horses who kind of separate themselves from the rest of the field, right? We have Meg Scanlon, who's, head and shoulders above everybody else, kind of in a galaxy all alone by herself. Then we have Angelina Martinez. And fun fact, I think Angelina actually aged out of the juniors on the day that she competed. I believe that
Right.
was
She
her
turned
birthday.
24. She turned 24.
Yeah.
That was her birthday.
Right. So what a birthday present to give to yourself, right? You're kind of aging out of the juniors. And then you're also orchestrating this 15-kilo PB total and kind of announcing yourself as like, hey, now I'm in the open and I can clearly make some noise. And it's good. I mean, yet another reason why it's really cool that Meg competed is because you have these young upstart lifters who crave that opportunity to compete with the world's best on the same platform. And the high tide raises all boats. And so, yeah, it was just an exciting session to watch.
I think Sydney actually posted and saying, okay, I got a little excited on that last deadlift. I didn't need to do that because it would have gave her more than she needed to get onto the podium.
Right.
She actually did not have to pull that much.
Mm.
She
She
could
didn't
have
need
pulled
that
less and
much.
got onto the podium. However, I mean, in the day, she felt, no, let's go all out. I want a big pull. I want more than that. And whatever, you make these decisions on the fly. But now that she can look back, 2020 hindsight, I don't think she's going to do that again. She said, I read a recap, got a little overzealous there. I think maybe next time I won't go so in. But anyways, moving on into the 69s, and this was probably the battle on the women's side for sure. Celine the Machine wanted that world spot. She's been chasing that world spot. Last time we seen her at Nationals, sensational battle in the 63s against Megan Scanlon, of all people. Came up short, moved up a weight class, and look at how she finished off now. In a great battle between these 69, she missed only one of all the misses she had, the bench at 130. And I seen her hit 130 previously in prep for this. A little bit surprised she missed that 130. Nevertheless, it was the only lift she missed. Gabby Martinez finishing with, so Celine finished with 566.5. Gabby Martinez missed her third squat, finishing with 552. And Jackie missing her second bench and third pull and finishing with 550. Amelia, tell me about the 69s.
Like you said, this was so highly anticipated and it really didn't let us down whatsoever. Celine missing out on being in the national team before, you could tell how much she wanted it. All three of them, Celine, Gabby, and Jackie, all really, really pushing each other here. And I don't think one of three of them went 9 for 9. Like it shows how much they were really pushing each other in that. And Celine really put on a masterclass. She had that one miss on bench. I'm not, too sure what happened. Like you said, we've seen her bench more than that, but competition day certainly isn't training. Um, but even from the squats, Celine was leading the charge and did a really good job by the time it came to that subtotal to have created a bit of a gap. And it wasn't a huge gap by any means, but Gabby and Jackie at that point were separated by 2 kilos, I think, and they stayed that way the whole time. So for Celine heading into deadlifts, heading into bench, both of them to slowly start building that gap really made the ask for Gabby and Jackie a lot bigger. In terms of finishing that 566.5, a huge total. It already on nominations looking at Worlds in 10 weeks' time, put on the podium in bronze. About 14 kilos ahead of Martha Jenner, who just won Euros. Of course, above her, Carola Gara and Agata Shitko. So some fierce names in the 69s. And I think regardless of how that pans out and how close or far the podium will be, each individual one of those ladies in their own right are just incredible athletes to watch lift. And I think Celine is one of those athletes, and she did that at nationals. I think she'll do it at Worlds, where she just puts on a show, and she's, pretty incredible for that.
This was a closer battle than the totals might appear, and this happens sometimes. You take a look at the totals, like, wow, that's a bit of a spread. But Gabby
Yeah.
Martinez's second deadlift was convincing. And that third pull was by no means some Hail Mary that wasn't going to go, and she had no chance of it. That 227.5 flew, and it looked like she had a lot left in the tank. And I know when you look at the totals, you might think, well, Celine, by quite a bit of a margin. No, no, no. That was closer than people think. And next year is going to be even more fierce. But Gabby obviously was the national champion returning. Celine took it, and Gabby went to Worlds last year. But this was a close battle, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was phenomenal because, as you said, Ryan, you had national team representative last year, Gabby Martinez, who won nationals, and then of course represented herself really well at Worlds, just coming off podium, in a really tight battle there with Annie Nelson from Great Britain and so forth at Worlds. But Celine really came and put on an exceptional performance. Was able to gain a chip advantage there in the squat. A little bit of backstory or information, if I can, about the bench. Celine is used to setting up as kind of crawling through the head of the bench, behind where the referee sits. And that rule is not allowed in the IPF and IPF federations. So they kind of nabbed her for that and made her set up, by addressing the bench from the foot of the bench. And I think that might have just, I don't want to necessarily say rattled her, but when it changes your habit, your routine, your process, you have to adjust. And the second bench looked great. I think they took a conservative 130 on the third. And I'm not sure if she touched in the wrong spot, but maybe just having to set up a little bit differently. But certainly that's, something that Jason Tremblay and the strength guys and that whole outfit will get sorted for Worlds. I'm sure she will now adopt a new setup, routine, knowing that she can't do that at Worlds and she'll be held to a stricter standard and so on and so forth. But yeah, she just lifted exceptionally well. And then, of course, Gabby right there the whole way, we use the expression. Actually had a Brit tell me this at Euros, hindsight is always 2020, but it's never won a gold medal. And so it's easy for us to say, maybe Gabby, should have taken, 208 or 207 and a half or something like that on the third squat because it was just a little bit out of reach for her. And, maybe if she'd had those kilos, it would have saved her from having to load up 242 and a half at the end. Maybe she would have been able to load up 240 or 237 and a half, and that would have been more in her wheelhouse to kind of catch Celine. But an exciting battle nonetheless from all three of these ladies, whose nominated totals, I believe, were only separated by 5 kilos. So when you look at what they totaled, and then you look at, what would they be able to do had they made all 9 lifts, it just clusters them even more. And so I just think it's really exciting to see. So congratulations to Celine for obviously earning the national team slot. I know that Gabby is a fighter. She will be back, and likewise with Jacqueline. And so, yeah, it's awesome. And I think to Amelia's point, when you're kind of looking forward at the nominations for Worlds, you kind of have those 2 people in the 69s that are clearly a cut above everybody else. And I think we're going to wind up seeing a real scrap and a real fight for the podium at Worlds, because I know Annie Nelson's going to have something to say about all this and is going to want to put her best foot forward for Team GB. So yeah, so I think we're going to see a real fight there, even though on paper, the nominations, it seems like Celine is kind of a stitch ahead of the rest of the field there. I think you've got Marta Jenner and Annie Nelson, some people who are really, really nipping at her heels. So that should really prove for a tight battle there at World. So just exciting what the 69s are doing.
That was our reminder that you're the national team coach for Great Britain. In the USA recap, you squeezed in the British. But, yeah, it also, look at these ladies in terms of that squat session, batting around a national record. Jackie doing 201, Gabby answering. This is the second round of squats. Gabby answering with 202, and then Celine, the machine, living up to her name, 208. Yeah. And then from there, obviously the record finishing with 214 with Celine the Machine. I mean, right off the bat, these ladies breaking national records on the second round of squatting. I mean, they upped it. And again, to Jackie, not to be lost in the shuffle at all here, Jackie on her third attempt was trying to apply pressure. Had she hit that, she would have been in the lead because she was forcing Celine's hand to hit her third.
Mhm.
Gabby, everybody was applying pressure going for the win. Nobody was falling back and conceding. Even if you thought, well, I'll hit this and it'll force people's hands to have to hit their lifts. Um, Good gamesmanship, good attempt selection, and the ladies lived up. All three of them breaking national records. All three of them doing phenomenal performances. They all lived up to the hype. It was a great battle, and it for sure. I'm looking forward to Worlds, and I'm also looking forward to next year because you never know who moves up, who moves down, what new faces pop up at the 69 kilo class. Frick, it's wild that just a few years ago we didn't even have this weight class. Talk about a good idea. They did that. But anyways, so moving from battles to the 76 kilo class was not a battle. Crane and Warford showing up and showing out. And Matt, I know you like your smooth 9 for 9 days. She did miss a bench. She did miss a bench. And I would have thought if you would have put $1 million on the table and said that she hit 127 and a half, I would have said she would have. Ordinarily, I think she would, and it'll probably be there in the future. But hitting a clean 590, I think 600 kilos, which is that round milestone that all these ladies are trying to hit. I think it's there for her by the time she goes to Worlds. What do you think about Crane and Warford, her performance, Amelia? And then we'll also talk about the other 76s.
Yeah, I mean, Creenan had a phenomenal day, like you said, missed that final bench. And I agree. I think we were both surprised to see that, especially because she doesn't miss too often. In the few times we've seen her compete, she's a great competitor, and she said before she competed at nationals that she wanted that 600, and to end on 590, obviously tantalizingly close, but it's there. I would say she would had more kilos in maybe every regard. Like obviously we saw that bench mishap, but she's hit more than that in training. We've seen I think a couple more kilos in the squat. I think she had more in the deadlift, and I think if she put together that 9 for 9 day where she was feeling pushed, which she's going to be at Worlds, that we could see that 600 for sure. You know, she walked away with a 217 and a half squat, that 122.5 bench, which was the one that she ended up on after missing the 127, and a 250 deadlift to end up. Like she was leaps and bounds ahead of her competitors, 52 and a half kilos, I think is what she won by, which is incredible. And, you know, being on 590 is not just incredible at a national level, at an international level as well. And we saw Agatha hit 600 for the first time, I think last year it was. We thought it was, you know, it was unheard of. It was unheard of. And it's definitely worth not overlooking uh how huge that is, especially with Carlina being nominated at 610.5. You know, it's not impossible to think that's going to be a good battle between the two of them. You know, Carlina, if doesn't she doesn't have a perfect day, Cranen is right there on her heels. And I think again a little a little glimpse into what Worlds is going to be like in a few weeks' time. And I think Cranen, if all goes well, has a really good shot at that title.
Yeah. So Agatha hit 600 at 69. It was actually Carlina who's the first 76
Yeah.
who she's going head to head with. And so I'm going to throw this to Matt here. First off, just rounding out the U.S. Nats, Jessica Kinney coming in silver and Jasmine C coming in bronze. Jasmine having an off day. She went 4 for 9 and probably coming in was looking like a favorite for silver medal, but 4 for 9, it's not going to do it like that. She had a rough one. I'm not sure exactly what happened on her end, but Jessica Kinney taking advantage, only missing one squat, but rounding off with a 537 and a half. So it was a battle on the podium, and as it stood, that was the 1, 2, 3. And looking at Cranion's 590, I think she had room. They didn't need if she got that bench, we're talking another 5 kilos right there. They held
Mhm.
back her squat a little bit. Deadlift probably had some room, but again, they're just trying to cover some new ground. They didn't want her missing. They wanted to build confidence. They wanted to potentially go 9 for 9. Obviously, she missed that bench, but that was the game plan. They didn't really need to reach or overreach. But to Amelia's point, Carlina doing 6'10.5". How much of a threat do you think Crane can pose when she goes to World? She's going to have to be 600 and up. I think we all agree on that. Is 600 enough to threaten Carlina?
I don't think 600 is going to be enough to threaten Carlina. No, I think she'll need more than 600. But to be fair, I mean, clearly Cranen is 600 capable, because I think what we saw from her was a very solid 590 performance, obviously throwing 5 kilos on what she did at Worlds last year. But she was when you're in one of these situations where you don't necessarily have to put your foot on the gas, there's just part of you that's kind of in your mentality, kind of knowing like, hey, I've got this thing won. And so it's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. You kind of hold back knowing that you don't have to empty the tank, right? So her squat was 2.5 under her PB. Clearly, we all thought she was going to make that third bench. And I think she's capable based on how that second one looked. And the third deadlift looked really comfortable. So to your point, Ryan, I think a 600-kilo total was there on the day, or maybe 595, 595 to 597. I just think she'll need more than 600 to dethrone Carlina. That's all I'm saying. I think she can beat her if Carlina makes some mistakes and kind of slips up. But as we've seen from Carlina, world record squat capability, so there's probably going to be a chip involved there, and just about as gritty of a competitor as you can possibly come up against there in the 76s. So I'm not sure that 600 is going to do it. But I also think, to be fair, by that time, I think Cranen will be at 600 and perhaps a few kilos above, if we're being fair. I mean, I think also when you kind of look at Cranen's meet history, she's only competed 8 times. So, the fact that she was able to compete again and go 8 for 9 and kind of sharpen her sword, so to speak, and gain more competitive experience is just going to bode well for her when she does go over to Germany and lock horns with the likes of Carlina Tonkatea.
Yeah, look, if she did have 600 on that day, 10 weeks later, to say that she would have 610 that's not crazy. That's not crazy. So if she did have, and when she goes to Worlds, there is no going underneath your squat personal best. There is none of that. If you're going to threaten for the title, you don't take your foot off. You can do that here. And I think it was probably a good idea because the battle's early. You don't know where Jasmine and you don't know what's going to happen. So you're treading a little bit safe. I get it. Clinch that national title, clinch the world team spot 100%. I co-sign their decisions. But at Worlds, you don't go under your personal best. You don't match your personal best. If you're 100% healthy, you go over your personal best. And you need to hit personal bests on that platform in squat, in bench, and in deadlift. If she does that, if we thought she was good for 600 on the day when she won the US title, she might get around 610. And if she can get 610, to Amelia's point, she can threaten Carlina that if Carlina misses, you take the world title. That's all you need.
Right.
If Carlina is the favorite, and Carlina will be the favorite, she's a monster. She's done this before. She's been in showdowns before and won. She's won world titles. She's the favorite. But you need to hit your personal bests and apply that type of pressure. And you need to extend to the point that you might miss. They didn't have to do that here. That's what you were saying, Matt. You don't have to because you don't feel the pressure. But you need to take risks at Worlds. You'd be crazy not to. You have one shot to be a world champion. And while she won comfortably here, next year, nothing is ever guaranteed. It's not, well, this year Worlds is podium, next year. No. You may never come back. Trust me. That's how the game is played. If you think you have any chance at all to take that world title, drop the hammer. Personal bests on all of them. Reasonable personal bests. Reasonable. 2.5 kilo, 5 kilo, whatever. But if she does that, yes. 610 might be there. If she's 600 here, 610 could be there. That's only 10 kilos. Yes, you can. Get to work, Cranen. If you're listening to this, you got 10 weeks to potentially be a world champion. But I'm glad she did this. And I'm glad we got an appetizer here. We got a taste for what's possible. You better serve up the main course at Worlds. Carlina's a monster. Make her hit her lifts. That's all we can ask for. Um, but anyways, anything else on the 76s before we move along? Okay, let's jump into the 84s, and I'll preface this with a little bit of background. So I talked to Amanda Lawrence, in the preview show when we were talking about the battles, and we were just focusing on battles. We weren't doing a division by division deep dive in it, but we all were like, "What is Amanda Lawrence doing here?" Your Sheffield total is going to be for sure enough, and especially if she had any kind of injury. Spoke to Amanda Lawrence beforehand, and she said, I just want to compete. It's a national championship. I give value to national titles. I want to show up. I want to lift. I want to have fun. I want to meet people. I want to be at the event. It's an opportunity to. She said, I'm not going to go crazy to re injure myself. We'll see how it goes. Now, having said that, so squats, she still finished off with 242.5. Bench press, she still hit a freaking personal best bench press. I think the foot off the gas, let's just have some fun. I'm not trying to do any like a personal best total. I honestly believe that was the game plan. I honestly believe that. But when you're hitting personal best like on bench, her abductor injury isn't going to impact the bench. Well, obviously it didn't. At least it didn't enough because she still hit a personal best on the deadlift, coming down to the last deadlift, we seen Joey Flex leave the platform, his hands like this. And if you guys are just listening to the audio only, he was like, It was that, uh, emoji, essentially, right? Where he's like, do I? Do I? And as soon as me and Amelia seen, well, yes, 267.5 as the last deadlift was being loaded. And as it turns out, she was going all in. And what the heck? Didn't look like she injured herself. And Amanda Lawrence went all in, and it was the last deadlift was the only one she ended up missing. Probably could have did a stitch less and ended off with around a 640 total, or a little bit more. But she pushed all her chips to the middle, wasn't risking anything. You could do this. There's no risk. Probably going to be the same deal at Worlds. She's so far ahead of all the 84s. Amelia, what were you thinking about Amanda Lawrence, her performance, and how it all played out?
Well, like you said, right, went and spoke to her just before she competed, and she was like, "Oh, that was really cool of Meg to put up a performance like that. I can't promise I'll do the same. I'm gonna take it easy because, and because of my injury. So it wasn't her
Lies.
suddenly yeah, well, we both walked away, and after that, we were like, I don't think she was lying to us. I think
Yeah.
that was genuinely, like you said, the game plan. She was going in, taking it easy, and I think after feeling out squats, still getting, I say respectable, an amazing squat, but I mean compared to her best, respectable number on the board. Like you said, seeing that subtotal, seeing how much they could push it if she was feeling healthy, and just missing that last pull and getting that close to her world record on a couple of different areas is amazing. She has 10 weeks to feel fully healthy, same as Natalie, and to see what she could build in that time. 10 weeks is a tremendous amount of time, really to add strength, to get healthy. And she seemed really, really fired up by that. We knew she wasn't going to be chased. Really, she could have won more or less with her openers. But again, to what Matt said earlier, it's great to see national champions, people who would have walked away with their total. Again, I'm not against or for or against people doing it, not doing it, but it's great to see them come and show the respect and show their selves. And if they know they're going to win by a significant amount, just get more competition experience. She has plenty, of course, but it was her first nationals, I think, since 2022 because of all the Sheffields. And I think, she wanted to come back and claim that title. It's enough to know that you could be national champion because you're strong enough, but it's another thing to carry that title and say you are national champion, you are world champion. It was a great showing from Amanda. Obviously, internationally, she's not really contested on on nomination. She's 44 kilos ahead of the next lifter, who's Ziana from Great Britain, and then near 30 kilos behind Ziana is Jess Bittner, who's just moved up to the 84s. Um, and so it's really exciting. If that's what she could do on a day that she's gonna hold back and until the end of squats, I think she was going to, or even until the end of bench, she was going to, then Amanda at full throttle in a few weeks' time is going to be, I think, the most we've seen her be able to push her total or herself in quite a bit of time.
At, this was a bit of a surprise underneath Amanda in terms of how the 84s ended off. Tiffany Savage, the returning 84 kilo national champion, ended up actually off the podium. And Tiffany didn't have necessarily a bad day. Now, on their last deadlift, she had to kind of move all in here. She had missed her third bench and she jumped up to 237 and a half on her last pull. So she ended off with 570. I believe her PR best before this, correct me if I'm wrong, was 572 and a half. So she wasn't far off. And obviously, if she didn't have to go as heavy on her final pull, she probably would have hit a PR final total anyways. But Michelle Robbins, 9 for 9 day. Previous coming into this, Michelle Robbins' best was 535, leaving with 580. Leaving with 580. And she came in with 535.
Yeah.
Talk about a freaking improvement in not seeing her coming. Oh, by the way, Michelle Robbins weighing in at 80 kilos, 80.4. She's a small 84. She not only is 3.5 kilos away from filling it out. Most ladies cut a little, cut some water to make it. She's 3.5 kilos, not pounds, kilos. We're talking like 8 pounds away from filling it out. 580, 9 for 9. I mean, what a freaking performance by Michelle Robinson. She could fight for her attempts and she was scrappy. And then obviously beneath her, Layla Soto with a 572 and a half, nudging off Tiffany Savage off the podium, also going 9 for 9. The 84s, it was a bit of a shakeup. It was a bit of a surprise, but I'm interested because Michelle Robbins with 580, if Amanda Lawrence didn't exist, Michelle Robbins would be going to Worlds. And if we take a look at the nominations here, excuse me, pardon me, if we pull it up, Jessica Bittner, 571.5, third nominated. That's Jessica Bittner, for God's sake. Underneath her in fourth, 557 and a half, 555. So Ziana from Great Britain, underneath Amanda Lawrence, 600 even. You know, Michelle Robbins is a world-class 84. Now we see this. How does this happen? How do people shake it up like this? This makes it very difficult to scout when you're doing a preview show, first off. And imagine how Big Body and Tiffany Savage felt when they show up and like, oh my gosh, the gains that these young ladies have made.
Yeah, it's exciting to see because this is a weight class that obviously for as long as any of us can remember has been dominated by Amanda Lawrence, and there's been little else. And so it really is exciting to see just the growth of the class and then the growth of these lifters who can make, just exponential progress and the rate of adaptation is so high. So just hats off to those two ladies, Michelle and Layla, both of them just going 9 for 9, putting together signature performances and really, really representing themselves well. And also, a bit of a surprise with Tiffany, last year's national champion in the 84 class, because, to Amelia's point, Amanda didn't come last year, because she leaned on her Sheffield total. I think, I don't want to speak for Tiffany, but clearly, having missed that third bench and kind of being behind the 8 ball, but knowing that she's got the capacity to pull after these women, probably just said, the heck with it. You know what I mean? If I'm not realizing that she's not going to beat Amanda, she probably thought, if I can't take second, then I don't give a damn kind of where I land. I'm guessing that was probably the rationale that was going through her mind. Therefore, let's load up the 237 and a half. Let me see if I can grab that to the tune of 12 and a half kilos, and she would have landed above Michelle. But again, all the credit to Michelle and Layla for representing themselves well, for growing this class, for making it deeper, for making it healthier. And it's awesome. And just going back to Amanda, just to shower her with a little bit of additional praise. I know it doesn't mean much to our foreign competitors who are on the metric system. But congrats to Amanda for hitting that 300-pound bench. I mean, that's a huge milestone, 137.5. I know that she's wanted to kind of check that box for quite some time now. So she does walk away with a PB bench. And if she can just kind of nurse, I think you said, Ryan and Amelia, it was an adductor injury. If she can get that back up to snuff, I mean, look, she was just a missed deadlift away from breaking her PB total by 0.5 kilos. And that was on an 8 for 9 day. So presumably if she can heal, that squat ticks up, maybe the bench just holds, maybe she doesn't even make any ground on the bench, but she can repeat the 137.5 at Worlds and then get a bigger deadlift. We're going to see Amanda probably over a world record total performance, which is just exciting to see. And glad that she came there and locked horns with the rest of these ladies who, like I said, yearn for the opportunity to share the platform with these legendary lifters. And not only, it builds your legacy, and in theory, in order to become a world champion, you should first become a national champion. And then you represent your nation on the national team to go to worlds. It sounds better. It makes more sense, right? And so good for these ladies for coming and laying it all out. And yeah, it'll be exciting to see what Amanda can put forth at Worlds.
Just speaking of like Michelle Robbins, Layla Soto herself coming at 556 was her best, leaving with 572 and a half. I mean, she almost put 20 kilos on her total. These ladies
right
really stepped up for this national. And Tiffany Savage, 100%, she decided, look, she's the returning national champ. I'm not going to catch Amanda Lawrence, but I'm not losing to these ladies. And she loaded up on her last pull. Had she hit it, she would have been in second place. She would have bumped down Michelle Robbins, taken Layla right off the podium. I co-signed the attempt selection. You push your chips all into the middle and you have your goals. And yes, you're not chasing Amanda Lawrence, but you want to be the best of the rest, so to speak. And I'm fine with it. This is how battles happen sometimes. She didn't have necessarily a bad day. She did what she had to do. It's just these ladies had an absolutely outstanding day. So eager to see what happens. I think next year, if you ask me, could Michelle Robbins be 600 and up? Yeah. Maybe Layla too. With the progress they're making, when we're talking these kind of jumps on their totals, holy freaking smokes, especially seeing as how Michelle Robbins has room to spare if she wants to add some body weight. She doesn't have to add a lot. Let's move on to the 84 pluses, where we had return of a legend, Bonica Brown, 642 and a half, easy peasy 9 for 9 day as she moves into the world team spot. And I mean, that's not going to be an easy ask when you got Sonita waiting for you at Worlds. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Matt, what did you think about Bonica's U.S. national title win?
Yeah, I think, look, she came in and essentially, and respectfully was pretty much lifting unopposed. I mean, no Alexis Jones in the mix this time. So really no other contenders there. And just a legendary lifter in Bonica Brown. We know what she's capable of. It's like Bonica to make a lot of attempts, and she did exactly that. She went in and just made 9 for 9, didn't overextend herself to the tune of a 642 and a half kilo total, and just wrapped up the W by, a mile. Really just kind of lifting uncontested. And I think, that's probably just what the doctor ordered. I think in terms of Bonica kind of wanting to get back on that, kind of hitting her stride again. And then clearly, she's going to have to take that total and build on that total going in against the killers that she's going to face at Worlds. And now, oh, by the way, Australia and New Zealand and these other nations are rising up as well. So you clearly have the two that are cut above the rest, obviously, in Sonita and Brittany Schlater, and that it is going to be an all-out bloodbath there just to get on the podium. And it wasn't too, and you clearly say, and you've had said, Ryan, it wasn't too long ago we were talking about, Bonica Brown, being the GOAT 84 plus and just coming and having her way with pretty much everybody, and that's simply not the case anymore. So good for her to make it back on a team again. And see what she can do at Worlds.
Yeah, Nicolette with 567 and a half and Tashelle with 525. Good performances, but on this day, Bonica just ahead of the pack, clinching that U.S. national title. But Amelia, when you look ahead at the nominations, at one point, Bonica, hands down, the greatest 84 plus that ever lived. At one point, I remember every year when doing commentary, you would have battles all throughout. And by the time it got to the 84 plus, there was no battle to be had. It was just straight up the Bonica Brown show. But when you look at the nominations now, you have Sonita, Britt. You look at Bonica's 642 has her in seventh on nominations. Now, Bonica was in cruise control. She's got more in her. We all agree on that. But my goodness, are the 84 pluses. It is insane what we're watching here in terms of the progress.
Yeah, and there are only two women in the world, right there, totaling above 700 in Sunita and Britt. They're a tough one to beat. And even below them, like you said, the class has changed significantly since Benika has competed there. I mean, we last saw her in Malta, and even then was really the first year I want to say that it was a big battle, and only more names have been thrown in the hat since then. Like you said, Sunita and Brittany right there at the top in the 700s, but that fight for podium in Lucy and Natalie from Australia. We have Marilyn and Jewel from New Zealand. And then behind them, currently, like you said, with the cruise control total, we have Benika, Nat currently in fourth. And I know this is something we'll cover in the World's preview show in a few weeks' time, but Nat in fourth, having missed a final pull.
Right.
So there's a lot of very strong ladies. Actually, for the first time, in the last couple of years at the 84 plus class, maybe one of, if not the most competitive weight classes in the women's side of powerlifting, which is amazing because you want to see people lift the most weight and fight to get the places as well, and you get that in 84 pluses. So it's hard to say where Benika is in terms of her total because of how most of her lifts, I'd say her squat and her bench were definitely in cruise control. Deadlifts were by no means near top end, but I think more close to that top end than her squat and her bench were for sure. Um, and probably had to do some adjustments there in terms of her deadlift, but it's a bit of a question mark right now in terms of how she's going to face up against these, incredible athletes from Belgium, Canada, Australia, New Zealand in terms of that fight. So it's going to be one worth sticking around for to tune into the 84 plus at Worlds, and it'll be interesting to see having Benika back with all of those accolades and titles to her name, where she faces up against these newer names in the weight class.
Also, want to mention so winning best lifter, Megan Scanlon. Megan had let me just pull up her GL points here. Megan, 124.28 GL points. Absolutely phenomenal. Um, Obviously best lifter, but just giving a little bit of context to just how good that is. Last year's IPF World Championships, 123.94 one best lifter. Megan Scanlon is not only the best 63 in the world today, like you had said, Matt, you could argue she's the best 63 ever. And come IPF Worlds, she might win best lifter and have a stake in best pound for pound alive. Not going to get ahead of myself here. I'm just adding a little bit of context to how good a performance she had and what this looks like. Absolutely historic performance, and she might be the best lifter in the world today, pound for pound, regardless. Freaking nuts. Let's see what happens at Worlds because the other 63s are jumping off as well. And nobody's standing still. Nobody's sitting on their hands. They're all moving forward. I know previous coming into this, I said, let's put this all in one podcast. I changed my mind. Let's cut this up, the men's and women's, because as it were, I got to have a washroom break, lady and gentleman. So we'll end it there. For everybody listening, please do tune in for the men's recap show as well. Give us high ratings. As per usual, please do subscribe. And until next time, six pack Lapadat, six up, and we all right.